The book of First Chronicles, chapter 24, verse 1. First Chronicles, chapter 24, verse 1. First Chronicles, the 24th chapter, and the first verse. Just making sure we got everything right. All right. The groups of the priests. These were the groups of Aaron's sons. Aaron's sons were Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. But Nadab and Abihu died before their father did. Nadab and Abihu had no sons, so Eleazar and Ithamar served as the priests. David separated the tribes of Eleazar and Ithamar into two different groups. He did this so that these groups could do the duties of work that they were given to do. David did this with the help of Zadok and Ahimelech. Zadok was a descendant of Eleazar, and Ahimelech was a descendant of Ithamar. There were more leaders from Eleazar's family than from Ithamar's. There were 16 leaders from Eleazar's family and 8 leaders from Ithamar's family. Men were chosen from each family. They were chosen by throwing lots. Some of the men were chosen to be in charge of the holy place. Other men were chosen to serve as priests. All these men were from the families of Eleazar and Ithamar. Shimei was a secretary. He was Nathaniel's son. Shimei was from the tribe of Levi. Shimei wrote the names of those descendants. He wrote their names in front of King David and these leaders: Zadok the priest, Ahimelech, and the leaders from the families of the priests and of the Levites. Ahimelech was Abiathar's son. Each time they threw the lots, a man was chosen, and Shimei wrote down that man's name. So they divided the work among groups of men from the families of Eleazar and Ithamar. First group was Jehoram's group. Second was Jediah's group. Third was Hiram's group. Fourth was Soram's group. Fifth was Malchijah's group. Sixth was Mejam's group. Seventh was Hakaz's group. Eighth was Abijah's group. Ninth was Jeshua's group. 10th was Shechaniah's group. 11th was Lishib's group. 12th was Jacob's group. 13th was Hupa's group. 14th was Jeshabab's group. 15th was these names are something else. Lord have mercy. 15th was Bilgah's group. 16th was Immer's group. 17th was Hezer's group. 18th was Habaz's group. 19th was Pethiah's group. 20th was Jehezekel's group. 21st, Jacob's group. 22nd, Gamal's group. 23rd, Deliah's group. 24th, Mosiah's group. These were the groups of chosen to serve in the Lord's temple. They obeyed Aaron's rules for serving in the temple. The Lord, the God of Israel, had given them to Aaron. The other Levites. These are the names of the rest of the Levi's descendants. Shebuel was a descendant of Amram. Jediah was a descendant of Shubiel. Ishiah was a descendant of Rahibah. Israel family groups were Shemalth. Jahath was a descendant of Shelemah. Jeriah was the oldest son of Hebron. Amir was Hebron's oldest son. Jahaziel was his third son. Jachamim, his fourth son. Uziel's son was Micah. Micah's son was Shamir. Ishiah was Micah's brother. Ishiah's was Zechariah. Mariah's descendants were Mali, Mushi, and Josiah, his son. Josiah, son of Merari, had sons named Shoham, Zocher, and Ibri. Mali's son was Eleazar, but Eleazar did not have sons. Kish's son was Jeremiel. Mushi's sons were Mali, Elder, and Jeremoth. Many of you may remember we've gone over this again, but the Bible reiterates and reiterates and repeats and repeats, so you can memorize everything. These are the leaders of the Levite families. They are listed by their families. They were chosen for special jobs by throwing lots, like their relatives, the priests. Priests were Aaron's descendants. They threw lots in front of King David, Zadok, Ahimelech, and leaders of the priests and Levite families. The older families and the younger families were treated the same when their jobs were chosen. First Chronicles 25, the music groups. David and the leaders of the army separated the sons of Asaph, Heman, Jeduthun for special service. Their special service was to prophesy God's message with harps, lyres, and cymbals. Here's a list of the men who served this way. From Asaph's family, Zakur, Joseph, Nathaniah, and Asraliah. King David chose Asaph to prophesy, and Asaph led his sons. From Judah's family, Gedaliah, Jesiah, Shimei, Hashabiah, and Mathaniah. There were 6 of them. Jeduthun led his sons. Jeduthun used harps to prophesy and give thanks and praise to the Lord. Heman's sons were Bechiah, Mattaniah, Uziel, Shubal, Jeremoth, Hananiah, Eliath, Gedaltai, and Romantai, Ezer, Josh Bekasha. What a name. Josh Bekasha. I don't know whether I've ever seen that name before in the Bible, as many times as I've read it. Josh Bekasha. Matholai, Hother, and Mazathiath. All these men were Heman's sons. Heman was David's seer. God promised to make He-Man strong. So He-Man had many sons. God gave He-Man 14 sons and 3 daughters. I guess he was strong, 17 kids. Lord have mercy. He-Man led all his sons in singing in the Lord's temple. His sons used cymbals, lyres, and harps. That was their way of serving in God's temple. King David chose these men. These men and their relatives from the tribe of Levi were trained to sing. There were 288 men who learned to sing praises to the Lord. They threw lots to choose the different kinds of work each person was to do. Everyone was treated the same. Young and old were treated the same, and the teacher was treated the same as the student. First one chosen was Asaph, or from Joseph. Second, there were 12 men chosen from Gedaliah's sons and relatives. Third, there were 12 men chosen from Zakur's sons and relatives. Fourth, there were 12 men chosen from Israel's sons and relatives. Fifth, there were 12 men chosen from Nathaniah's sons and relatives. Sixth, there were 12 men chosen from Bukiah's sons and relatives. Seventh, there were 12 men chosen from Asaralah's sons and relatives. Eighth, there were 12 men chosen from Jeshiah's sons and relatives. Ninth, there were 12 men chosen from Mattaniah's sons and relatives. 10th, there were 12 men chosen from Shemaiah's sons and relatives. 11th, there were 12 men chosen from Azarel's sons and relatives. 12th, there were 12 men chosen from Hashabiah's sons and relatives. 13th, there were 12 men chosen from Shubiel's sons and relatives. 14th, there were 12 men chosen from Matthiah's sons and relatives. 15th, there were 12 men chosen from Jeremiah's sons and relatives. 16th, there were 12 men chosen from Hananiah's sons and relatives. 17th, there were 12 men chosen from Joshbekash's sons and relatives. 18th, there were 12 men chosen from Hananiah's sons and relatives. 19th, there were 12 men chosen from Malachi's sons and relatives. 20th, there were 12 men chosen from Eliathah's sons and relatives. 21st, there were 12 men chosen from Hathir's sons and relatives. 22nd, there were 12 men chosen from Gittal's sons and relatives. 23rd, there were 12 men chosen from Maziah's sons and relatives. 24th, there were 12 men chosen from Ramonti Ezer's sons and relatives. 1 Chronicles 26, the gatekeepers. These are the groups of gatekeepers from the Korah family. There were Mashelemiah, son of Kori. Kori was from the family of Asaph. Mashelemiah had sons. Zechariah was the oldest son. Jediah was the second son. Zebediah was the third son. Jothniel was the fourth son. Elam was the fifth son. Jehohanan was the sixth son. And Elihoniah was the seventh son. That's another name I've never come across before. Elihoniah. Obed-Edom had sons. His oldest son was Shemaiah. Jehozabad was his second son. Joel was his third son. Sakar was his fourth son. Nathaniel was his fifth son. Amiel was his sixth son. Issachar was his seventh son. Pelatiah his eighth son. God really blessed Obed-Edom, I guess so, with 8 sons. Obed-Edom's son was Shemaiah. Shemaiah also had sons. His sons were leaders in the father's family because they were brave soldiers. Shemaiah's sons were Othni, Raphael, Obed, Elzabad, Elihu, and Semachiah. Elzabad's relatives were skilled workers. All these men were Obed-Edom's descendants. These men and their sons and relatives were powerful men. They were good guards. Obed-Edom had 62 descendants. Meshelemiah had sons and relatives who were powerful men. In all, there were 18 sons and relatives. These are the gatekeepers from the Merari family. Hosa, son of Merari, chose his son Shimri to be the leader, even though he was not the oldest son. Hilkiah was Hosha's second son, Tebaliah his third, and Zechariah his fourth son. In all, Hosa had 13 sons and relatives who were gatekeepers. These were the leaders of the groups of the gatekeepers. The gatekeeper had a special way to serve in the Lord's temple, just as their relatives did. Each family was given a gate to guard. Lots were chosen to choose a gate for a family. Young and old were treated the same. Mashelemiah was chosen to guard the east gate. Then lots were thrown for Mashaliah's son Zechariah. Zechariah was a wise counselor. Zechariah was chosen for the north gate. Obed-Edom was chosen for the south gate. Obed-Edom's sons were chosen to guard the house where the valuable things were kept. Shupim and Hosa were chosen for the west gate and Shaliketh gate on the upper road. Guards stood side by side. 6 Levites stood guard every day at the east gate. 4 Levites stood guard every day at the north gate. 4 Levites stood guard at the south gate. 2 Levites guarded the house where the valuable things were kept. There were 4 guards at the western court and 2 guards on the road to the court. These were the groups of gatekeepers from all the families of Korah and Merari, the treasurers and other officials. Ahijah was from the tribe of Levi. Ahijah was responsible for taking care of the valuable things in God's temple. Ahijah was also responsible for the places where the holy things were kept. Ladan was from Gershom's family. Jehiel was one of the leaders of the tribe of Ladan. Jehalel's sons was Jetham and Jetham's brother Joel. They were responsible for the valuable things in the Lord's temple. Other leaders were chosen from the tribes of Amram, Izhar, Hebron, and Uzziel. Shebael was the leader responsible for the valuable things kept in the temple. Shebael was Gershom's son. Gershom was Moses' son. These were Shebael's relatives. His relatives from Eliezer were Rehabiah, Eleazar's son, Jeshiah, Rehabiah's son, Joram, Jeshiah's son, Zikri, Joram's son, Shelemith, Zikri's son. Shelemith and his relatives were responsible for everything that David had collected in the temple. The officers of the army also gave things for the temple. They gave some of the things taken in wars. They gave these things to be used for the Lord's temple. Shemaiah and his relatives took care of all the things that people gave to be used for the temple. This included the things given by Samuel the seer, Saul son of Kish, Abner son of Ner, and Joab son of Zeruiah. Kenaiah was from the Izhar family. Kenaniah, that's actually Kenaniah, that's it. Kenaniah and his sons had work outside the temple. They worked as court officers and judges in different places in Israel. Hashabiah was from the Hebron family. Hashabiah and his relatives were responsible for all the Lord's work and for the king's business in Israel west of the Jordan River. There were 1,700 powerful men in Hashabiah's group. The family history of the Hebron family shows that Zeruiah was the leader. When David had been king for 40 years, he ordered his people to search through the family histories for strong and skilled men. Some of the men were found among the Hebron family living in the town of Jazer and Gilead. Jeriah had 2,700 relatives who were powerful men and leaders of families. King David gave these men, 2,700 relatives, the responsibility of leading the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and the half of Manasseh and taking care of God's work and the king's business. Hopefully everybody remembers everything that we just read. But this is the word of the Lord. Put those words in the comment section. This is the word of the Lord. Follow, like, share, and subscribe, and encourage other people to join in with